Hello and welcome back to everyone that's tuned in to the American Ultra Stock channel. Thank you so much for being here. And well, it wasn't meant to be. The US loses. And before we go into the match, just want to say to all the Moroccans, congratulations. The best team won today. Thoroughly deserved win. So wish you guys the best of luck for the rest of the tournament. And now we're going to dissect what caused us to ultimately be stopped at the quarterfinals. Braden, in the first half, as we saw, well, your initial thoughts after that loss, what do you think?
Yeah, well, before analyzing the game at all, I just want to say to the Moroccans, all the ones who watched our preview video, thank you. You were all super nice in the comments, and we have nothing but respect for everyone from Morocco, and huge congratulations for the win. Hopefully you go on and win gold. We'll be rooting for you. But yeah, I don't think it was good enough. The better team won, like you said. The performance just wasn't inspiring at all. We had one shot on target the entire game, and it was a very weak header that never posed any real threat to the Moroccan goalkeeper. There's not like there were even many chances. I think there was maybe one clear-cut chance that we had all game. The defense fell apart, especially the players that I think had decent tournaments. I think our defense was pretty solid in the group stage. They all kind of just collapsed. And I mean, I said it when we previewed the entire tournament before it started. If we came up against Morocco as Abdi versus Hariel, it would have been over. And it proved me right. He absolutely destroyed Hariel on that wing. Ilyas Akamak on the other wing as well was so good. We'll get into a little bit better analysis of the game, but just the initial thought is it's not a bad run, but at the end of the day, it's another bare minimum performance. Better than Copa America, where we didn't even get the bare minimum, but it's still a little disappointing to not see us punch above our weight one time. The last time we did that was in 2019 in the U20 World Cup.
Yeah, and honestly, U20 World Cups, what do they really count for? I mean, I think that Olympics are more relevant. So ultimately, in the big tournaments, we haven't really done that in quite a while, I think, since 2014. But my initial thoughts are I knew that these types of games, it all comes down to putting away the clear chances you're going to get. It's going to be against a great team. And Miles Robinson, when it was 1-0, Tesman puts in a ball. Zimmerman does a great job at heading it in. Everyone in the box draws a defender, so it opens up for Miles to have a great opportunity. If he scores there at a moment where we were gaining some momentum, would have been a different game. But ultimately, can't really say that we even deserved it. But he put it he fumbled and we crumbled after that. So initial thoughts on the first half, Braden, where as we saw they had a lot more volume.
I don't think the first half was bad necessarily. I think you're going to see a lot of comparisons from me from this game compared to our game against France to open the tournament because I thought it was a very similar match in all aspects. We kind of let Morocco dominate possession in the first half, and I thought that was okay. I thought that was a good mentality to have. The one concern that I did have was that we showed nothing. There was one chance, maybe you mentioned in the second half, we'll get to that, Zimmerman heading it back across. He did the same thing in the first half pretty early on off of, I think it was a free kick or a corner, I can't remember, but he heads it back across. Paxton ends up being offside, unfortunately, and that chance goes to waste. But that was really the only chance. It was a half chance, but it was the only opportunity we had towards their goal, and it was all Morocco. We did do pretty well to contain them in the first half, except for the penalty obviously given away by Hariel. I still think it's a very weak penalty. I see why it was called, but ultimately, I think I've seen harsher penalties that haven't been called. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter because they still scored. It was a great penalty. Schulte even dived the right way, but couldn't get to it. And Rahimi, I mean, we previewed him in the preview. He was such a huge player for them this game, the whole tournament. It was just a little uninspiring. And going into halftime in particular, I wanted to see a big reaction from the players and from Mitrovic because we had 45 minutes left to save our tournament, and ultimately I don't think we really saw them.
Yeah, my thoughts on the first half. Just on the penalty, I think that Howard on the stream said that it was a harsh penalty. I'll be honest, that's a penalty any day for me. I mean, he gets zero ball and completely kicks the guy in the leg. I mean, if honestly, if the roles were reversed, I think we would feel really hard done by. I can't see a world where that's not a penalty. I know a lot of people said it's harsh, but in my opinion, you kick the guy inside the box. It was a dumb decision to try to kick it either. You're not even going for the challenge when the ball is up. horrible moment right there where it really kind of sealed our fate. Really, at that point, you're going up against a really quality team, and then they got more confident. We're on the front foot, but overall, a good performance. I thought that John Tolkien particularly did quite well. Yao helped marking as well, tried to help at times in transition. It wouldn't have been a bad half if we hadn't conceded. But we come at halftime, 1-0 to Morocco. We come out, and for a little spell, we looked like we were doing well. What do you think, Braden, on the second half?
Well, again, going back to our opener against France, it's the exact same situation because in that one it was 0-0 at halftime. They ended up scoring against the run of play actually, and then immediately after their goal in that game, we came out and we were firing, and then we conceded a second. The exact same thing happened here, and it's again the exact same situation because in that one we had a very clear-cut chance. John Tolkien hits the post with a wide open header. It should have been 1-1, and that would have changed the complete momentum of the game. Who knows? Maybe we even top the group and we don't even have to play Morocco if that happens. But it didn't. We ended up going on to lose 3-0. Today, we have a very clear cut chance, like you mentioned. Walker Zimmerman doing a great job to head it back from, I don't remember who put in the cross. Maybe it was McGlynn, maybe it was someone else. It doesn't really matter. Miles Robinson, instead of letting it go to Paxton Aronson, who is our striker, has a clear eye for goal, especially in those situations. That's where he thrives. That's where he scores the majority of his goals. He's right behind him. If he just lets it go, I think it's 1-1. But Miles just completely mishits his effort, goes wide, and instead of it being 1-1, and what you said, we had momentum in the few minutes leading up to that. Not as much maybe as in previous games, but we were knocking on the door, and ultimately the chance went begging, and just a few minutes later we concede to an excellent counterattack goal from Morocco as Abdi just dusted Harriel time and time again. He gets the better of him again, goes down the byline, connects with his former Barca Academy teammate Ilyas Akbamak from the other wing, who I thought was also fantastic, to make it 2-0. And then I think we just gave up. I think our players forgot the game was even happening because for the third goal, Hakimi runs in from right back. No one even steps to him. Schulte lets a very weak effort go by him. Just a calamity from everyone involved from the U.S. perspective. And then the fourth goal, again, this one, I'm not having any debate. Absolutely never a penalty. But again, it doesn't matter. It wouldn't matter. It's 3-0, 4-0. Who cares? The end result is the same. I think Harriel will feel a little hard done by that. But again, just a good penalty from their player, and we just collapse. And it's, again, we see this with the senior team time and time again. Every time we go down and behind, at least here we showed a little bit of fight to get back into it, but as soon as the second goal went in, there was no more motivation, there was no more energy, and it just seemed like we were waiting for the game to be over. The only one who showed any real motivation was Paredes, and that was after the game was done. He was crying on the field. It was nice to see that kind of attachment because it shows how much it meant to him. But on the pitch after that, I think we just collapsed, and it's just not acceptable, really.
Yeah, I mean, not much left to say, really. I think all comes down to that chance. And I think at that little period where we were doing quite well, I think is when McGlynn, who I thought was bad in the first half, was doing well because he was distributing the game well. I think it's a ball, I recalled it, played it on replay. It's Paredes. McGlynn sends a really good ball to the wing. Paredes passes it to Tasman, who turns and puts in, it wasn't the best cross, but Zimmerman does quite well to head it back. That, honestly, we can pinpoint, obviously we didn't deserve to win, but that would have changed the game. We were gaining some momentum, some volume. What a ridiculous shot. That's not even an attempt on goal, and that's a clear chance. Whether it was kind of just by opportunity that it happened, we didn't really create it, that's a chance you got to put away against these types of opponents. After the second goal, honestly, I thought the game was over already, and the players probably thought it as well. It sucks to go out in this type of scoreline because then it kind of diminishes all the hard work done before then, and we can't even leave saying that they did us proud because 4-0, I mean, really harsh. But now we're going to move on to the player ratings, where I think, and just before we do that, I think there are some guys that ultimately can leave with their heads held high, and we're going to do a comprehensive review on what went wrong in these Olympics, where we kind of rate. Let us know if you want to give us, if we want us to give player ratings for the entire tournament of players, each one by one. But moving on to Patrick Schulte, who I think he had something to play for, regardless of us being out, because he was basically auditioning for a possible senior call-up, as we saw in that shot where honestly shouldn't have gone in. How do you evaluate his game? He did let in 4 goals, but 2 were penalties.
I'm only gonna fault him for one of the goals, and it's the third one. That even isn't his fault. Letting Hakimi run through the entire team so effortlessly isn't on him. However, that absolutely should be a save. I'll give him some credit because in the first half he did have one really nice save to keep us in it before the penalty happened. And I mean, we did say on the first penalty he did guess the right way. There was just nothing really he could do about that one. And then the second one is what it is, really. I'm gonna give him a 4.5. I just he wasn't great. He made one good save, had one big error. Maybe he should be a little bit worse since he led in 4 goals. Ultimately, I don't think he was at fault for many of them. And like you said, we'll give more comprehensive reviews of every player in that video. So stay tuned for that. It's gonna be a good one.
Yeah, honestly, I give him a 4. That I know that it wasn't his fault to let in the 4 goals. I mean, 2 penalties. How much can you ask from your goalkeeper? But that Hakimi shot should have never been a goal. I know everyone was at fault for that, for letting that happen, but that's a ridiculous shot. If I'm on goal, I save that. I'll kick it out. Honestly, ridiculous to concede that goal. Moving on to the right back, Nathan Harriel, who was having a good tournament up until this point. How do you grade him?
It's such a shame because this game is going to heavily overshadow what we've been saying the entire tournament. He's been one of the surprises in a good way. And in this one, I think he kind of played up to a lot of what people have been saying. I still think overall it was a solid tournament from him, but when it mattered most, he kind of collapsed, giving up 2 pens. One of them definitely wasn't a penalty, but either way, he was getting dusted every single time as Abdi got the ball. He ran at him. You could tell they were trying to exploit him, in particular on that side, and it was the right game plan for Morocco, and it worked out perfectly for them. I have no choice but to give him a 2.
Yeah, honestly, I was gonna give him a 2, 3. Yeah, probably 2 is fine because I feel bad for him. Granted, he had never been thrown in such a high stakes game in his life, but ultimately you are. They should have done a little bit better. Like Howard said, at least force a pass, and I think at times he was overcommitting. Got dusted. Went up against a better player. I know how it is. I haven't played as a fullback, but I have to give him a 2. Moving on to Walker Zimmerman, who was, again, the better of the center backs. Sad to see what was likely his last performance, perhaps, in a USMNT jersey. What do you think?
Yeah, quickly, I just want to say, in terms of the right back, a lot of people think Brian Reynolds should have been the first choice. He would not have done any better than Harry in this game. That's all I'm going to say. But for Walker, yeah, I think he's proved in every single game in this tournament why maybe it is his final opportunity with the USMNT, and especially what he said after the game won't help that because he did kind of call out some of the players, not necessarily for this team, but from the senior team, saying kind of what Tim Ream said actually after Copa America, that the drive and the mentality isn't all there. They don't have the pride to play for their countries, and maybe that'll hurt his chances. But the fact that Miles Robinson gets call-ups over him is ridiculous because Walker outplayed him in every single game. I thought he's the only defender who actually had a good game in all 4 of them. Tolkien played well in the previous 3. Harriel played well in the previous 3. Miles maybe had one good game out of the 4, but I think Zimmerman again was solid. And even attacking, I mean, he was the only one who was maybe creating chances with those headbacks. I thought that was the one thing that worked pretty well consistently throughout the tournament as well. Having him on the far post, head it back across, and try to create chances off of that. We even saw him score one in a previous game. I'm going to give him a 6 for this game. I don't think I can give him much higher since we did concede 4 goals, but out of the defenders, I thought he was definitely the best.
I'm gonna give him a 6 too. That's what I had in mind. I thought he did well, honestly. The ref too. I mean, he got a foul that some people were criticizing. It was never really a foul. He touches the forward and the ref gives it. But anyways, I think that he can leave with his head held high. Overall, I salute him for his performances there. Didn't compromise us in any means, and he did what an overage player should do. 6 for Zimmerman sounds right. Moving on to Miles Robinson. As we said, can we really fault him for missing the chance? I mean, I can. How do you see his match, Braden? He had the ball of the game. Could have changed everything if he had scored that chance.
The funny thing is, defensively, I don't even think he was that bad. Truthfully, I can't really remember any times where he was going up against someone 1v1 defensively. He was kind of just absent, for better or for worse, in that aspect of the game, but the missed chance is absolutely inexcusable. If you are going to take that yourself and not leave it for Paxton, who is clearly a much better finisher of the ball, you have to at least hit it on target, test the keeper. We didn't do that at all in the game. The biggest chance by far, would it have ended up mattering if we scored? Probably not. Morocco were way better than us, but it would have changed the momentum of the game. I have to give him a 3.5 because of that. It's the only big chance that he messed up in a huge.
I'm gonna give him a 2. Because he missed the most important moment for us in an attack, and also for the second goal. I think he was. People can blame Tolkien for that one, can blame Harriel, but he's an overage center back, and he's just standing there. Even before the goal goes in, you look, he's not even looking around. He looks to his side. The player's already passed it and stays there. So honestly, even the blame will be shifted to players that shouldn't be because of his lack of quality. Doesn't well, he has experience for what? Bad experience. So honestly, I'll give him a 2, and that's being kind in my opinion. Moving on to Joel Tolkien, who was very active in the first half. I'm interested to see what's going to be the rating you give him.
First half, he was solid defensively. A couple errant passes that I didn't like to see. Those coming from Miles as well. Both of them, I don't think were the best on the ball, but I think defensively he was pretty solid. Ultimately, their right wing created so many opportunities, and I will fault him a little bit on the third goal. But again, there's not a lot he can do because Hakimi's running through the middle. There's a runner on the right. I believe it was Ilyas Akpomah who had an incredible game. Kind of torched Tolkien a couple times, to be completely honest, but Tolkien was in no man's land. You have to mark one or the other. It's going to be a goal either way. He ends up deflecting the shot, and maybe without the deflection, it's a save for Schulte. We saw that happen, the exact same thing against France. He deflected one and it went in. I think he's just a little unlucky this tournament. But overall, I think defensively he was solid. He didn't provide anything going forward, really, which is completely different from the other games, and maybe that's something you can fault him for. But the opportunities also weren't there. The midfield wasn't moving. The forwards weren't moving for him. I'm just going to give him a 5.
Honestly, I'll give him a 6. I was surprised with he was overloaded with the task to defend on the Morocco's right side, basically by himself. Miles didn't step in to try to anticipate anything. McGlynn on the first half, as we know, he's not really the player suited for this match, so that blame can go more towards the coach as well. So I thought Tolkien did a good job, honestly, in my opinion. Some misplaced passes, but even on the turn, he tried to progress the ball, didn't do anything going forward, but he always had the intent and didn't really compromise. That's what I was looking for, and I thought he held himself quite well in a side where he was basically alone. So I'll give him a 6. I thought the Tolkien didn't do bad. Moving on to the midfield, we had Tessman at the 6, not Dietz like last game. How do you see his game?
I think it was pretty disappointing from Tessman, to be honest. Not that he had a bad game necessarily, but I think he was a little quiet. And to be at the 6, the heart of the midfield, dictating things, he just wasn't really doing that. Towards the end, you could see he was trying to create something, trying to get some shots off. But overall, he just doesn't have the speed to be doing that type of thing. Maybe you can blame some of the other players for not taking that initiative, and props to him for at least trying to create something. He had a couple of shots that were blocked or off target. He did have our one shot on target off of a very weak header, so I guess props for that. But I'm just going to give him a 5.5. I just think he was a little quiet, and overall I would have liked to see more of a presence from him in the midfield.
I'll give Tessman a 5. I'm a huge fan of Tessman. If he ever comes across this video, honestly, I think there is a future player there for the A team. I stand by that. But ultimately, I thought that, yeah, the players around him weren't all that great. He created that one cross that ended up being missed by Miles. It was a good chance. But overall, there was one moment in the game where he tried to do a little pass. It came out of straight off of the Balogun or Musa handbook, where they try to do a little bit too much on the ball. I think as a captain should probably do that. But overall, good tournament for him. But today it was a little quiet. And there was a moment him and McGlynn were combining where things could have happened, but ultimately they didn't. And with the performance all around, it ends up being a 5 for me for Tessman, just based on the expectations I have for him as a player as well. Moving on to the player that was to his left, McGlynn got the nod ahead to start. How do you see his match, Braden?
Well, I said it in the preview. Despite McGlynn being definitively a better player than Maxi Dietz, especially as a midfielder, this was not the game to play him. I think Mitrovic got it completely wrong, because against Guinea, McGlynn should have started over Dietz, but in this one, Dietz should have started over McGlynn. The game just didn't suit him. It was passing him by. Speed is kind of something that he also isn't the best at. He's not the quickest, and him and Tessman combining there, they're both pretty slow as a midfielder pair. So I think it was just working to Morocco's advantage, because their midfielders, especially Bilal Kanous, were just running circles around them, really. And the few times that we saw McGlynn on the ball, I think he was good playing the long balls. That's his strength. But again, I think we need to be in a type of game where we're controlling possession for him to do that. And we were kind of just sitting back, letting Morocco attack for the majority of the game. I just don't think it was the right decision to start him. there's nothing he can do about that necessarily, but he probably could have done a little bit better in the game. I'm just going to give him a 5.
I'll give McGlynn a 4 because I thought that on the first half, although it's not his strength really to mark, he could have done a little bit better to anticipate. If you don't have the speed, try to anticipate. And I thought he did a really bad job, at least in creating volume to force a pass on that side with Token. Overall, I think it was an awful decision managerial wise, but I have to grade the player, so I'll give him a 4. And he was a very important part when we had that volume. Again, that chance that Miles missed, it all started with his long ball, but ultimately, at the group of things at the end of the day, I think a 4 is fair for him. Moving on to Mihailovic. Was he playing, honestly? How do you grade his match? The overage, again, it all comes down to this, the overage spots that we took, and we had Mihailovic starting today again. How do you see his match?
Are you sure he was playing? Are you sure it wasn't someone else starting? I mean, I didn't really see Mihailovic on the field at all. And for an overage midfielder, he has to be the one leading by example, especially since we do have Tessman and McGlynn in there who both like to sit a little deeper. We know Tessman's traditionally a 6. McGlynn is an 8, yes, but he's a deep lying playmaker. He loves to play the long balls out wide. He doesn't get as forward necessarily as some other midfield options would, like maybe Kramaski on the bench, Taylor Booth. Mihailovic in there as the 10, he has to take initiative and start to create something. I don't think he created anything in this game. He took a couple set pieces maybe, but I think McGlynn took the majority of them. Mihailovic without set pieces, what does he even do? I don't know. I don't know why he's in this team in the first place. This in particular is a game that we really could have used Diego Luna over him. It just goes to show the bias from Mitrovic in selecting him was ultimately not a good idea. I'm going to give him a 3. I couldn't even tell he was on the pitch.
I gave Miles a 2. I have to give Mihailovic a 2 as well. I'm not the biggest EP ratings guy or statistician, but if you look at this game, he had the least touches out of the midfield, the least accurate passer out of the midfield. He had some very wasteful passes trying to build from the back. And interestingly enough, McGlynn and Tessman had a really good pass accuracy, and Mihailovic was the one at fault for that. Defensively, I thought that he did help us to at least contend some of the attacks on the right, but ultimately, this is an overage guy. This is the guy that's supposed to be the spark and do things differently. And honestly, when he came off, it was like he didn't even play. I felt like a really poor match from Mihailovic. I'm going to hold him to a different standard. I'll give him a 1. I'll give Mihailovic a 1. I feel like that sounds right. I have never given anyone a 1. I'll give him a 1. Moving on right here to on the left side, we have Griffin Yao starting, overloaded with some defensive duties. How do you see his match? Didn't really get the opportunity to do much.
Just a little disappointing, I think. I mean, you could tell the guy was trying, but especially how well he played against Guinea and even his cameos off the bench in the other games, you expected him to come into this game red hot and try to do something. Yes, he's up against Achraf Hakimi, but Hakimi was committed going forward a lot of the time. I mean, we saw how involved he was on that right-hand side in the attack. I think there maybe could have been some potential opportunities. Yeah, it's not the best matchup for the guy, but he just was another one who was a little invisible, more than I would have liked. I'm just going to give him a 4.5.
Yeah, honestly, I'll give him a 4.5. I'll give him a 5 because although he barely played, he was the one with most tackles, and I thought that defensively he did his best to be there. Didn't really get the opportunity. He didn't really get the chance to create. Some of Token's passes were misplaced. Mihailovic tried to pass to him twice where he misplaced the pass and didn't get that much of an opportunity. I think ultimately we expected a little more. I'm not going to be too harsh on him because, again, didn't get much time or action on the ball, but I'll give him a 5. Moving on to Paredes, who was perhaps the liveliest player we had playing. How do you see his match?
I liked what I saw from Paredes. You can tell every time he plays, the mentality is there, the ambition is there, and he showed that there wasn't as much success in this game for him as there was in some of the other ones, but he was at least trying to create chances, trying to go at his defender. He always stuck with the play. Even when he lost the ball, he came back, tried to make the tackle, and we've seen that a lot of defensive duties for him throughout the tournament, and I think he's been very solid that way. He won 11 duels for whatever that's worth. You could tell he was getting amongst it. One of the only players on our team who actually was doing that. So I'm going to give him credit. I think he was probably our best player in the match. It's not saying much, really, but props to him. And again, after the match, I think that picture of him and Hakimi consoling him, huge props to Hakimi, by the way. That's how a captain is supposed to act, a true leader, consoling the other team. But you could tell how much it meant to Paredes, and I didn't really see the other players, yeah, they were upset, they were sad, but I didn't see that much emotion from them, and you could tell how much it meant to him. I'll give him a 6.5.
Honestly, I thought that he was the one trying to create the most. You see the mobility. He's a little bit more agile than the other players. So he, again, helped a lot when he had the ball, got fouled quite a lot as well. I haven't really checked, but I thought that he was held quite a few times getting into those battles. Tough game to grade. I'll give him a 6, honestly. I would give him a little bit more, but I don't think he really had that much of a chance. We lacked the volume and the cohesiveness to create more and allow him to have a better match, which I think he definitely could have had the other players been better and we set up in a more successful way. But now another player that I think is tough to grade, Paxton Aronson at the 9, playing the false 9. Very tough match for him. How do you see it?
I think all things considered, considering his skill set, and he's not a typical number 9 hold up play kind of guy, I think he was all right in terms of that aspect. It's just, again, maybe this is one that you should have started Maguire just because I think the game would have suited him more. And now when he came on, he didn't do anything. We know he's not the greatest of players, but he does provide that physical presence to hold off a couple defenders and maybe lay it off to the midfield. I thought Paxton did an okay job of that, but I think you could tell a couple of misplaced passes. It's just not his game. I think the matchup just wasn't right for him. Maybe on the wings he would have had a little bit better to do. I'm just gonna give him a 5. It's an incomplete grade, really. I think every time he got on the ball, he was okay, and I think he had one solid run where he beat a couple defenders, drew a foul. He would have probably scored if Miles left the ball for him, and he did have that chance that was offside in the first half. Yeah, I'm just gonna give him a 5.
I feel like a 5 is fair, really. And I actually disagree. I think that he should have started ahead of Maguire regardless, because even the physical presence, I think that he can sniff out a chance better than Maguire can. Ultimately, I think it was the right choice to start him. It's just, again, I don't know what was trained, if we really studied our opponent. And that brings us to the last rating, because I know that we had a lot of guys come on, but it was very tough. I think some of them were mercy cameos, like Ramaski, just to get some minutes there. Let's grade the coach before we end this, Braden. I think that this is a match where, again, these guys are all less experienced. They're U23s. How do you see Mitrovic at the helm today?
Well, I'm glad you said that because if you had told me to rate Maguire or Booth or any of the subs, I would have just said, "Come on, there's nothing to grade. They didn't really do anything. They were kind of just there to get their minutes and then leave." But I think Mitrovic, for everything he's done well in the build-up of this tournament and even in this tournament as well, I just think he got this one completely wrong from a tactics perspective, from a personnel perspective. We've already mentioned some of the lineup changes that he maybe should have made, and the subs as well. They didn't have the impact. Maybe you can blame the players, but again, it's the manager who's the one making those changes. To go from Dietz starting the last game to not even playing a single minute, I think is odd. Yeah, we were chasing the game, but I think he probably should have started in this one. Hindsight's 2020, of course, but the matchup would have been better. And really, I just don't see anything that's confidence inducing. You expected a big team talk from him. We've seen that in the past, especially when we did play France in the build up to this tournament in March. We drew that game 2-2. You saw a very inspiring team talk from him in the locker room to that one. Maybe we'll see if a behind the crest comes out for this tournament, what he was saying, but I don't think he really did much to inspire the boys in this one. I'm just going to give him probably a 3 out of 10.
Yeah, I think that this is why, I mean, we see Spain's coach, Morocco's coach, Japan's coach, guys at this level, preferably they have to have had the experience as a player, really. Guys that are trying to get into coaching that have been there and done that. Mitrovic doesn't have that to back it up, and I thought that tactically he set us up for failure and set up some players for failure as well. Players that will be honestly targets of criticism, maybe rightfully so, but it was all due to his decisions. So I'll give him a 3 out of 10. He let, I think, everyone down. Don't want to be too harsh on him, but I think that a guy like this needs to be a little bit further down in the program. If you're coaching U23s, you need to have aspirations to be an 8-level team manager, and that wasn't the case. But let us know in the comments below, how do you see this match? Ultimately, it wasn't meant to be. We came across a better team. Again, congrats to all of the Moroccans, and stay tuned. We're going to have more content related to the Olympics and also for the season that's starting. There are some good things to look forward to, so make sure to leave a like, subscribe, share with your friends, and we'll see you next time.